Welcome back, focused learners, to another deep dive on the explainer. I am absolutely thrilled to have you here today because we're looking at something, well, completely fascinating. We're unpacking the secrets of arguably the most unconquerable country on Earth. A nation that has somehow managed to avoid the devastating wars of the past few centuries, despite being completely surrounded by global superpowers right in the dead center of Europe. I'm talking, of course, about Switzerland. But how exactly did they pull this off?
Okay, let's dive right into this, because this is really the central question we have to figure out. How do you make a fiercely neutral country completely unconquerable? I mean, when you aren't picking fights and you refuse to join massive military alliances, how do you ensure that aggressive neighbors, even someone as dangerous as Adolf Hitler, look at your borders and just decide to look the other way? Well, the Swiss came up with an answer that honestly sounds like it was pulled straight out of a comic book.
By wiring their own country to explode. Literally. I am totally serious. They took their own marvelous, pristine infrastructure, their stunning mountain roads, their incredibly engineered bridges, their deep Alpine tunnels, and they rigged the whole shebang with TNT and bombs. They basically built a massive national self-destruct button. Instead of pointing all their weapons out at the enemy, they pointed a huge portion of their explosives squarely at themselves.
So all of this falls under Part 1, the explosive defense strategy. You see, because of the towering Alps, there are really only a few viable ways an invading army can physically get their heavy equipment into the country by land. And the Swiss recognized this geographical bottleneck as a golden opportunity. They turned these unavoidable entry points into a sequential nightmare. Imagine being an enemy commander for a second. First, the bridges and tunnels vanish in a massive cloud of smoke, completely halting your advance. If you somehow find a way around that mess, you run into step 2, massive concrete tank traps. There are literal lines of these giant concrete blocks stretching all the way from the shores of Lake Geneva straight up into the steep mountains, specifically designed to stop tanks dead in their tracks. And step 3? Well, as your tanks slow down to navigate these traps, suddenly the innocent-looking, picturesque Swiss cottages up on the hillsides open up. Turns out, they're actually military bunkers disguised as houses, hiding massive cannons pointed perfectly at the vulnerable, unarmored bellies of your tanks. It is an absolute gauntlet.
And if those physical barriers weren't enough, there was also the ultimate threat, poisoning the Rhine River. The headwaters of the Rhine start right inside Switzerland's borders, flow through a massive portion of Western Germany, and end up in the Netherlands. The Swiss actually threatened to poison the river to cut off Germany's safe water supply if they became too aggressive. It's a terrifying, almost unthinkable threat, right? And what's wild is that in the 1980s, the Rhine actually was poisoned by a chemical spill in Switzerland. It was deemed a complete accident, of course, but man, it certainly served as a grim reminder to the world that Switzerland has absolute control over a vital European lifeline.
But, an unconquerable fortress is really nothing without the people to man it. So let's look at Part 2, an army in disguise.
If you visit Switzerland today, it feels incredibly peaceful. They haven't fought a war since they lost a major conflict to France a few hundred years ago. Back then, they were highly sought-after mercenaries, but today they are deeply, deeply committed to peace. Do not mistake that peace for a lack of defense, though. There's this famous saying that goes, Switzerland does not have an army. Switzerland is an army. This is because they maintain an insane level of neutrality. They aren't in NATO, they aren't in the European Union, they only joined United Nations 19 years ago. To maintain that strict independence without relying on allies, they rely on compulsory military service for all Swiss men. Their entire population is trained and ready. And because of this continuous mandatory training, if a threat were to appear on the horizon today, Switzerland could raise an army of 800,000 soldiers almost instantly. For a country of its size, that number is just staggering. It's a mobilization speed and scale that would make literally any invading general sweat.
So how exactly do they mobilize so fast? Well, get this. This is an insanely genius, borderline crazy fact. Until 2007, every single person who went through mandatory military service kept their entire kit at home. We're talking their full military uniform, their assigned assault rifle, and live ammunition just sitting right there in their bedroom closet. If the alarm bells rang, hundreds of thousands of citizens could literally jump into their gear at home, sling their rifle over their shoulder, and walk out their front door completely ready for combat. Now, keeping rifles in your closet is one thing, but what about the heavy artillery? What about the Air Force? That brings us to Part 3, the Hidden Mountain Fortress. Okay, lean into your spy thriller fantasies for a second here. Deep inside some of these mountains are highly classified, hollowed-out air bases. Picture this, a sleek F-A-18 Hornet fighter jet. The pilot fires up the engines deep inside a cave.
Suddenly, massive, perfectly camouflaged rock doors swing open right on the side of a mountain, and a fighter jet blasts out into the open sky to launch a surprise attack on an unsuspecting enemy. We only even know these exist because soldiers occasionally post about them on social media before being swiftly ordered to delete the posts. The exact locations are fiercely guarded national secrets.
And it's not just the military hiding underground either. When Hitler was sweeping across Europe, the Swiss realized their civilian population, who lived mostly in easily accessible flat terrains, needed a secure place to retreat. So they passed these incredibly strict bunker laws. Historically, if you built a house, you were legally required to build a bunker underneath it. Today, the law dictates that every single inhabitant must have a protected, nuke-proof shelter that can be quickly reached from their residence. They literally have enough bunker space for their entire population. Think about that for a second. Now, thankfully, these bunkers have never actually had to be used for a nuclear fallout or an invasion. So what do you do with millions of square feet of nuke-proof underground real estate today? You get creative. The Swiss use these massive, highly secure, temperature-controlled spaces for practically everything now. They use them as aging rooms to perfect massive wheels of Swiss cheese. They use them for safe wine storage. Tech companies use them to house high-security data servers. Some have even been converted into quirky underground hotels. It's a rather delicious and practical use of apocalyptic architecture, don't you think? But jokes aside, the threats back then were intensely real. Which brings us to our final section. Why didn't Hitler invade?
Now, what's really interesting here is that survival basically comes down to two main historical theories. On one side, you have the theory of military deterrence. This argues that the rigged bridges, the impenetrable Alps, and that massive, instant citizen army made an invasion simply way too costly in terms of blood and treasure. On the flip side, you have the theory of economic cooperation. This argues that Nazi Germany found a neutral, cooperative Swiss banking system much more useful than a conquered, destroyed Switzerland, and most historians agree it was really a combination of both.
To understand the mechanics of that survival, we have to look neutrally at the economic realities. During the war, Switzerland delivered resources to Germany on credit. The Swiss National Bank allowed Germany to exchange gold for foreign currencies without requiring proof of origin, meaning they were buying gold stolen from invaded nations. In exchange for this financial utility, Switzerland was allowed to stay out of the fighting, and this also allowed them to secretly continue trading with the Allies for essential food and coal that the Swiss population desperately needed to survive the winter. It is a deeply complex and controversial reality of wartime survival mechanics. But, there was also a third, totally external factor at play. Hitler actually did have a very detailed, concrete plan to invade Switzerland. He saw their independence as a personal insult. But before he could execute it, Germany committed heavily to their Russian expedition. The campaign in the east suffered terrible luck and drained massive amounts of German resources and manpower. Taking the Swiss Alps suddenly became a luxury Hitler simply couldn't afford. The harsh winters of Russia inadvertently saved the valleys of Switzerland.
So the crucial point to take away from all this is that this unconquerable status wasn't achieved by accident. It was a really unique mix of geography, intense preparation, economic utility, and historical timing. And it's an identity they're slowly relaxing today. If we look at the timeline, they lost their last war centuries ago. They joined the global community at the UN just 19 years ago. And in 2014, the Swiss military finally officially announced they had gone in and removed all the TNT and explosives from their bridges and tunnels. The self-destruct button has finally been disconnected.
Though, to be fair, the tank traps and the nuke-proof bunkers are absolutely still there. They figure, why tear them down, right? You never know when they might become useful. But it does leave us with an absolutely fascinating thought to end our explainer today. If a country whose entire identity is based on being incredibly prepared has finally disarmed their bridges, what highly classified modern defenses do you think they're building behind those camouflaged mountain doors right now? Thanks for learning with me today, and I'll catch you on the next one.